And we're very pleased to have here Bruce Roth, who is the founder and the executive director of the Daisy Foundation. But Bruce's real passion is concern over weapons of mass destruction, and it's in that capacity that he helped establish the Daisy Foundation. And among other things that they do, they are sponsoring this talk here. One of Bruce's notable achievements is this book, appropriately titled No Time to Kill, with that wonderful painting by Salvador Dali with all the melting clocks and what have you on the front page. And if any of you are interested in this book, I have a copy. You're welcome to look at it, and I'm sure Bruce can find ways for you all to acquire copies.
Now it's my honor to introduce our featured guest. Jan Lodal is a prominent figure in nuclear arms control in civil society and has extensive experience in nuclear security issues. He served as Principal Deputy Under Secretary of Defense for Policy in the Clinton administration, on Henry Kissinger's staff as a Deputy for Program Analysis under the Nixon and Ford administrations, and as Director of the NATO and General Purpose Force Analysis Division in the Office of the Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara during the Johnson administration. Mr. Lodal is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the International Institute on Strategic Studies. He previously served as the Executive Director of the Aspen Study Group and is a recipient of Rice University's Distinguished Alumnus Award for Public Service and Achievement in Business. He was twice awarded the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service, the department's highest civilian honor. Let's welcome Jan.
Well, I think, I think the world is closer to actually a consensus on a lot of this than it might appear. Even in the early days of Putin, he was willing to go along with this. And, Medvedev actually agreed with President Obama when he made his, after he made his strong statement in Prague about a world free of nuclear weapons. And the corollary of trying to get to a world free of nuclear weapons is that you got to create a regime like this. This is not the only thing you got to do to get the world free of nuclear weapons, but it's one of the necessary things you have to do. And we actually had the president of modern Russia say he was in favor of trying to bring the world in this direction. China has not particularly said anything one way or the other, but China has a very interesting policy toward its nuclear weapons. It actually does have a defensive policy. It doesn't have very many. They don't have about 40 or 50 weapons that can hit the United States, compared to the thousands that we're having. I'm not saying that's trivial, but they have not built a big arsenal, and they have a no first use policy, which says we would only use these in defense. If you have a no first use policy, you have effectively said that the only purpose of your nuclear weapons is to prevent the use of nuclear weapons by others, and you have no other purpose of nuclear weapons. And when you think about it a little bit, what does that imply? That implies that if everybody else is willing to give them up, you're willing to give them up, because you have no purpose for them if others will give up their nuclear weapons. So China has effectively said they would go along with getting the world on a path to no nuclear weapons. Again, if you believe that, you believe that you have to do this. So if you look at the fundamentals, and I could go through India, Pakistan, and the other states, and how do you unravel that spaghetti chart I showed up here that showed how proliferation went in this direction, how do you turn it and make it go backwards? Sort of like a lot of time travel movies which try to show you what would happen if we could really turn time in the opposite direction. And it's not quite that hard to do this. The fundamentals are feasible if you look at it on a case-by-case basis. The diplomacy is difficult, but in my opinion, if the President of the United States were to make a major effort to do this and exercise American leadership, we still have a leadership role in the world. We very quickly get a large number of states to sign on with us. Of course, we get England, probably even get France, believe it or not, we get virtually all the non-nuclear weapon states would sign on right away and join in this effort. And so we would be pretty far down the road, and it would be increasingly difficult diplomatically as time goes on for other states to stay outside the regime. And one could develop a variety of carrots and sticks to make it in their interest to get inside the regime. Is it tough? Yeah, it's probably the toughest diplomatic challenge we would have faced since the Non-Proliferation Treaty or some of the other things that we faced. Is it assured that anybody can do it? No, it's not assured. But what is assured is that if we don't do something like this, the technology that underlies nuclear weapons is such that a terrorist, if they can get their hands on the material, can make a weapon, and there's lots of leaks in the system that tries to ensure that they can't get their hands on the nuclear material. And in fact, there's some leaks in the system to ensure that they can't get their hands on a finished weapon either. Some of those I've had personal experience with from my years in government, and I've seen some of those things firsthand, and it can be a bit scary at times. But when you look at it as a whole, it's hard to avoid the conclusion. I don't know anybody, any senior official who has been involved directly with the operation of these weapons and who does not believe that the system is less than perfect and therefore over time something will go wrong. And that's military or civilian. So that's what we have to do. We have to get people on board. I think it's a lot more likely to get the world on board to try to do this kind of a regime than it is to immediately convince them to eliminate all nuclear weapons or to give up their nuclear power or to join in a regime that applies only to them and not to everybody. So that's why you have to have these criteria, why you have to say it's universal, why you have to make sure that we are willing to accept the same terms that we're trying to impose on everybody else. And you have to do all of these things at once in order to make it feasible, but if we're willing to do that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. It doesn't impact our national interests to do any of those things. And it doesn't run any serious security or military risk to us in a post-Cold War world to do any of those things now. It's just a matter of getting on with it and doing it. Thank you very much.